Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Inspector here today with something very fine for you. And I have here Raptgos latest and maybe greatest question mark, the Raptgo Bridge. Yes, after the widely successful last attempt of Raptgo, the hybrid with the planar. Yeah, today we are looking at another hybrid IEM from them, and this is actually not a planar, it is a dynamic driver with 2 BAs and a piezo bone conducting driver here, so it says here at the bottom. 12 layers, very important. Oh, and has dip switches, of course. And yes, and today we are taking a look what this thing can, what it can't, and what it should be getting. And yeah, first, let's start packaging accessories. That's thick packaging what we have here. Just for reference here, this would be the packaging, for instance, the Turbowin Kailua comes in. So you can see this is basically like more than double in width and about the same in depth. So that is big packaging, and if you would have it in your hand, woo, that thing is heavy, I tell you, heavy. And yeah, that means usually you just shake it a tiny bit and then you can just slide it off, so that's nice. And then you get greeted here by the manual and this very, very cool carrying case, although I'd argue it's more of a storage case because it's really so big, you ain't want to transport this. And then we remove this, you realize, actually this is not weighted, the packaging, this is just cardboard, it's light. This thing here has a nice heft to it. And yeah, if you actually look at the details of this case, it is not as good as the first impressions, because yes, you can see this is kind of a metal thing that's glued on here. You can clearly see the difference, and you can also feel that that's cold, that's plastic, and that this is the trend all over, like this entire thing here is plastic. And it would be metal, it would be more heavy and more expensive, yes, but it would be way cooler. But even like this, it does not feel that cheap. Like it's still, and as you can see here by the thickness of the plastic, it is thick as plastic and it feels rather solid to have. And yeah, this is also not real glass in case you think this is plexiglass, so it's just plastic as well. And I think the main weakness of this were probably the hinges. As you can see here, this here does not seem to be the most trust-inducing to me. And maybe also the closing flap, because let's open that. Look on the inside here. That's also not the greatest quality piece of engineering here. But to their credit, as you can see, the tolerances around here are pretty neat and it just fits on there nicely. And I'm not sure if no, that's probably, so also the color theming here is well done, because yeah, this is the same color as the IEM thing would have. And generally this whole thing is the same style as the IEM, so that is really, really cool and I like to see that. And as I think already said in my unboxing, nice attention to detail. This here actually is fake leather, so it doesn't slip around. If you just put it on the surface, like it ain't really slipping that much. Of course, rubber would be better, I know, but still it's not that slippery. Like just plastic or just cardboard, like in this case, would slip much more. So that's definitely nice attention to detail. And when we open this bad boy up, and then the cable would have been, and IEMs would have been here, so also there, in terms where it would clank anywhere, nothing would happen, they would have been packed. And the even more nifty thing that you probably can't see in this video that well, that's rubber. This thing here, the entire inside, it has a rubber inlet here. You can see you could remove it for cleaning. It's really nice to see, but they have a custom-made rubber piece for this thing. That really requires your tooling. Like, wow. I can't imagine that they have tooling for this thing. Like, it's just a transport case. And it fits the style. And I'm pretty sure I've not seen anything similar anywhere else. So, really, Raptgo went out of the way and produced something specifically for the bridge that is also required like completely custom-made tooling. Actually surprising to me. And then you have here the selection of tips, which, yeah, these are just renderized silicone tips. Like, they're not great, they're not bad at all if we talk about accessories here. And unfortunately, there's no difference between the yellow, between the white ones and the blue ones here. Those are essentially the same tip. They feel exactly the same as hardness. They have the same outlet diameter, it's just different colors. And yeah, I think Raptgo should have chosen at least and set of tips that's different. Like make this one maybe quite a bit thinner in terms of outlet diameter, or make it even thicker, or maybe put foam tips in. That's what I would have liked to see, especially at this price point. And yeah, the IEM here it would be the cable in this compartment, and here the two IEMs. And as you can see here, there's also some cable slits, so you can actually put the cable through. That is really nifty attention to detail and really, really nice. And yeah, I like to see this from Raptgo. As well as this thing here. This actually is magnetic. So it just stays on here, like you just, whoop, and it stays in place. Like, let me just demonstrate. Just stays in. Also, nice attention to detail. Just can't flop around at all, because here, at this place, there's a magnet beneath, as you can slightly see here. And then you get this thing for dip switches, which shows a standard piece, like you have seen this probably a bazillion other IEMs. But it's also magnetic, so also here it just stays in place. Nice to see. And then this plate here brings me to one problem when we talk about the accessories. You can't unscrew it. Like, I don't know, like, what the fuck? Like, I really tried to unscrew this. I tried with my fingernails to go behind to try to get it loose. You can't. It's screwed in so tightly, it's basically impossible to untighten if you don't have a specific pair of tongs that would do the job, which I'm not sure if I have here in my new flat. And then more weird, these are called, see the filters here, high frequency and equilibrium. But if you look at the actual filters from all angles, they look pretty identical, huh? And we look at the back, look at the meshes, also look identical to me. Like, they're not thicker, yeah, really just the same, essentially. Like, I'm a bit confused. Like, I don't think these filters will do much, but because I couldn't get them loose, I also can't try it. And this is also the main criticism here. Why do you make something like this if it's very similar and then screw it in so tight that people can't remove it? This is nice attention to detail, how it's mounted here. But it has to be removable. Like, how am I supposed to do this on the go or anywhere? Like, I just can't. Like, you can't expect me to have tools to unscrew something like this. Like, that's bogus. And I don't like to see this, this oopsie. Let's say it an oopsie. Because the whole thing, nice. And then they fuck up on the last mile with this. Mischance. So yeah, packaging accessories, I like this style. It's very unique. It's very cool. I would like to try it. And the tooling that went in here and the attention to detail, pretty cool. But there's the small oopsie with the filters, which you just can't remove. And they pretty much are identical with filters. So yeah, out it goes. And after we talk about this, let's come to the IEM, which we now spoil you the surprise. This is how it's looking. And let's get me the case back once more. Is that style matched or is it style matched? Again, really nice attention to detail, and it's actually cool, I have to admit. Like, usually you don't see that cool cases. And then that also matches stuff, yeah. So yes, that's the bad boy we have here. And it's a metal shell, so it's nice to see. It's also, I've never seen any shell shape like this. Unlike, for instance, the shell of the Triple Win or Lina, and what was it, the next one? Forgot the other Triple Wins. Like, we have basically standard shells. Like, I've seen those shells in other IEMs as well. This one here looks pretty custom made to me. And again, it's metal, so that's nice to see. Here you have the printing on with the serial number and yeah, left and right. And I think we start on the inside today. Here's actually the piezo bone conduction driver. We talk more about when we talk about sound. Some dip switches here. Unfortunately, you can see the integration of the dip switch is not that great. Like, it's not actually plain. As you can see here, it's like slightly sticking out. It's not too bad. It's like maybe 0.5 millimeter or so. It's fine. And yeah, these are standard dip switches. So if you switch them every day, they will break. But if you just switch them occasionally, absolutely no issue. And yeah, then we'll come back to the inside quickly. There's a pressure hole here. So usually you don't have driver flags. We talk about comfort. Come to that later. And yeah, then on the front, the nozzle, which is a two-piece design. Like, this is all one part of the shell, but two-piece. You can actually unscrew this, as you can see. And you can see there's directly a BA behind it here, and I assume this is the treater. because this actually is a two-way crossover. So you have one BA for highs, one BA for mids, and one the dynamic for bass. We talk more about that when we talk about sound later. So as you have seen, there's no filter in front of the BA. So if you remove this, be careful. If dust or dirt gets in the BA, it will probably die. So be careful if you unscrew this. But generally this is a nice screw mechanism. It's pretty tight. Has not loosened in the week I've been using it. So yes, and the driver here, as you can see, slightly recessed. And then we come here at the top part. So this is kind of a three-piece faceplate, as I would say it. You can actually see lightly through it. And yeah, this is not semi-open. It theoretically would be semi-open, right? Because the drivers would be behind it. But practically, I don't think it is. Like, it isolates rather well for an IEM. And yeah, this piece or this design here, I'm not sure how well this will last over time. But I mean, at least the gaps around it are nice here. And the side glued here, so you can see like very minor seams. Tolerance is very good. You can basically not feel it with your finger. But because this thing is glued on this plate and then the center part here is also glued on, I'm not sure what glue they use here. I had something that only time can tell how well that is really glued on. Like, if you just have it in your hand, this feels well made, and not sure if this is metal actually. I think this might be actually metal here, but it could also be plastic. It's difficult to tell. And yeah, last but not least, a 2-pin connector that is going off in here at 45-degree angle. And I like to see this angling. The only issue I have over here is, I'm not sure if this is the cable or VM, like the 2-pin connector here is extremely difficult to remove. I tried it in my unboxing, I could barely get it to move a bit, and I also don't want to remove it now. So if you want to replace cables, be aware of that, be careful, like when you remove it, otherwise you might bend pins. But yeah, overall build quality of this thing actually is good. I don't have much complaints here. As I said, like, I don't know how well this 3-piece design here will last over time, but the rest of it is absolutely well built, and I don't see many issues with it at all. Again, minus the slightly safety hazard here. If you remove this, be careful, otherwise you could damage your BA in here. Yeah. And then next, let's talk about the cable. And I think I start from top to bottom, because there's again, Raptgo continuing this trend where things kind of work and then kind of fall apart on the last few centimeters. There's no ear hook. Like, this is a really floppy cable. This will just flop all over the place, will not stay on your ear thoroughly. I think they should really opt in for ear hooks here. That's not nice. And you actually, essentially, you are forced to use the chin slider, which is also so fast sliding, it doesn't really stay on place. Like, it is okay. It has a bit of friction because the cable is sticky. But yeah, that's also something I don't like. But this is not great construction. Like, it should have ear hooks, and the chin slider should actually like stay in place. So that's something I really would like to see them improve in the next iteration. And maybe when you're already on it, use still a thicker cable. This is not the thinnest cable, but it's also not great. If you had other IEMs with better cables, yeah, this is still a downgrade from there. Although I have to give Raptgo credit here, this cable at least is relatively smooth. Like, usually if you just flop it on, it doesn't tangle like this. It's it stays relatively smooth, and only now, because I had it rolled before, it is a bit tangly. But as you can see, if I just put it here, it just slightly bends, but no tangling is happening, and it is in all-day usage relatively smooth. So yes, and then we come from this cable, which is a bit thinner than the bottom cable, as you can see here, just a bit though. So it's not too thin, but also not the greatest. Come here to the splitter, which is just aluminium, so that's kind of alright. It doesn't really fit the theme here in my books at least, so I think they should have opted in for something black, but okay. And when you come to this bottom cable, that's a tiny bit thicker than the top cable, but really not the thickest at all. And as I said, this is sticky. Like, I don't like sticky cables. I'm not sure if this is an ingredient I put in the rubber, but usually it also dissolves a bit faster when it's sticky. And I'm not a fan of sticky cables, but your knowledge may vary here. And if you like sticky cables, well, more power to you. I just tell you, I'm not particularly fond of it. And yeah, that's it. And at the bottom, you have this weird, I call it a noodle connector, because it's so noodly. Like, this is really small, it's plastic. doesn't seem to be well made at all. But actually, as you can see, the strain release here does actually work in releasing strain. And the 90-degree connector usually means that most of the strain is on this plastic part here. So that should be okay for most use cases. And yeah, then you have the 3.5 here. So like overall cable is just not good, especially considering the price. That is between, what is a normal pricing, like 160 euros or so. The cable is definitely not good enough for the price. I really would like to see them upgrade to something better. But yeah, let's come to comfort and fit. And I think you might already see a problem because my review for the spring tips went not that positive. But the nozzle here is tremendous. I don't know how to describe. This is a really chunky nozzle. Let me quickly find the measuring thing because I forgot to note the measurements. Okay, let's take a quick measurement together because I just forgot to note it here. So, slide it on. Yeah, 6.6 millimeters, and the lip is also not much smaller. Brings us to 6.2. Oh. This is just too much. Like, I didn't particularly like the Kiwi ES Quintet for thick nozzle, but this one is still thicker than that, and it doesn't get much thinner behind it. So that means basically most tips are out. Like, I couldn't fit the SpinFit CP360 on it at all. Like, just couldn't get it on here. They are still fine for 6.4 barely, but 6.6 just doesn't. And yeah, most other tips also just either didn't fit or just didn't fit my ear canal. And that means the exact only tip that worked for me on here were the spring tips, because those are relatively short. They are also very squishable in terms here. And that means that this IEM actually fit me with the spring tips pretty decently. And I think if you get them to fit just right for your ear canal, like this can be a reasonably comfortable IEM because the shape here essentially is boat shape. So you shouldn't have too many problems with it fitting in the ear canal. And unlike other more boat shaped IEMs that they looked out for, you don't have like a real edge or real corner on this side. So it does fit most pinners just fine, or it should at least. Just keep in mind this is on the bigger side of things, the actual IEM length. Let's do that together here. Yeah, 2.1 centimeters, and the IEM depth is 1.4. And so that means it's relatively big IEM, and yeah, small pinners might have problems. And when we look at the nozzle length, it clocks in at about 6 millimeters, so it's like medium nozzle length overall. So yeah, if you can like mine is a bit shorter, I think you should also opt for short tips. But if you do that, it can be somewhat comfy if your canal is not too small as well. Mine is short and small, and really the only thing I could fit on here is the spring tip. As you can see, it's short tip, so yeah. And in summary, I think this is an overall okay comfort. It's not too bad, but also not too good. And I think this could be more comfortable if I just opt for a thinner nozzle. I would say go for a maximum of 6 millimeters, make it a bit smaller. And I know then you will have problems fitting the BA in here, but well, then maybe just push the BA a tiny bit back. So it should work here. You have enough space in this thing. And yeah, you would have more space if you just remove this thing here, which we talk more about in the sound chapter. And we talk about isolation. And yes, I already said, or as you can already see here, this is kind of semi-open back design. You can see some electronics through here, but it really doesn't translate like that. It's not like headphones. If you have ever had a semi-open headphone, it sounds a bit more open and you hear more sound through it from environment. Here you just don't. Like, it actually isolates rather well, and I think you should actually be pretty well equipped for most situations. So that means if you are in the office, it should be fine. At home, it should be fine. If you walk through a city, it should also be fine. The only thing that I did not think it's good enough for is when like major in streets or really the city center when it's really busy, there it lags a bit. But again, if you just throw in a few foam tips, I think it will also do better, and it should be really isolating for most situations well enough. Again, but if you expect it to sound semi-open, it just won't. And then drivability. Yeah, depending on the switch configuration you have here, AFA has 17 or 34 ohms with an impedance of 105/109 decibels per milliwatt hour or per milliwatt. And yeah, that means it's kind of standard. Like, it's not too efficient, it's not too inefficient. And in my experience, most dongles just give you exactly what you need. And percentage, I noted about 90% on the random dongle I had. It gets a bit better though if you upgrade from the random dongle to, for instance, the UP5. I think the bass might get a bit more tight or a bit more controlled maybe. And yeah, staging gets a bit improved, but it's really, again, it's 10% or so better maximum. So you are fine with a dongle here, just don't worry about it. And then we come to sound. And I think before we talk about the general sound characteristics, let's talk about the big elephant in the room. The bone conduction driver ain't doing shit. That's how it is. I already criticized those things with a few other IEMs where I was like, I'm actually not sure if it actually does bone conduction. It just doesn't. Like here in this implementation, 0. It is recessed first. So as you can see here, that means it will not touch your pinna, it will not touch any bone, and the air that you will have here is a pretty bad conductor for this type of, if you want to do real bone conduction. So even in that, it's already out. But because I'm a man of science, and just because I think it might be, I'm not giving up. So I also tried A/B comparison. I put a piece of foam behind this here, like a big piece of foam that basically lands from here all around, which does absorb then basically all vibration. And yeah, it sounds exactly the same. There's no perceived difference. And I really tried to hear like what bone conduction usually would do. It's like, does the imaging now appear somewhere in your head? Is it not where it usually is? Like, where do things happen? Like, is there a perceived difference in the mids? Because it should be best for mids for bone conduction or the upper mid frequencies. And like, do I hear anything? And I really tried, but it ain't doing shit. Like, really, the bone conduction driver here can probably reduce the cost of this IEM by like 20 to 50 bucks. And it would still be exactly the same IEM. So I would recommend Raptgo, throw this shit out, release the bridge again. And also, when you already do it, remove these switches. Like, look at my graph here. The switches ain't doing shit as well. Or at least, to be precise, they're doing teeny bits in the bass, sub-bass to be precise here, but not a lot. Like, it's almost inaudible, I would say. And even worse, let me now throw in another measurement so you can see the channel balancing. Yeah, the channel balancing is worse than the actual effects of these switches. Like, maybe when I did the different measurements here, maybe I just tiny beanie rocked this IEM a bit and hence created this imbalance, or like not the imbalance, but the change in frequency response between the different measurements. Don't know, but still, the switches don't do anything audible. And yeah, they could save, I would say, probably another 20 bucks or so if they just remove these switches and re-release the Raptgo again. Yeah. And then we come to general sound characteristics. Yeah. It's a V-shaped IEM, right? It is very V-shaped indeed. I think the best comparison I will bring it to you over the course of this review is the S12, because that has a similar like lower treble boost / upper mid boost. It's very similar there, and then it's just continuing bright, but this one tops it by a lot and goes even more bright. And yeah, that means it will generally come off as pretty treble forward, as relatively exciting and energetic. And I think if you like really treble boosted IEMs, this could actually be for you. But if it's not your thing, I think this thing is directly dead for you. Like, it's very treble forward and it won't work for everybody. But let's not stop there. Let's talk into the details. Yeah, the bridge does not really extend a lot past 10K. So unlike the S12, which I will, as I said, compare to most of the time, the bridge has, according to measurement, a peak at like 11K. To my ear though, if it's like 11 or 10K, it doesn't really matter much. And because it dips from like 9K directly down a lot, I don't really hear any frequencies of this not much. So you do lack a few of the trailing end of tones, and the leading edge could be a bit softer pronounced, but it's not too bad. I mean, at this price, there's a bit of upper treble, and that's fine. Like that's all you should still. Maybe, okay, it's like with the planars, maybe you should ask for more, but it's fine. It's not great, it's not bad, it just does all right. And yeah, going a bit further on from there, I mean, yeah, it is very bright again. Again, let me throw on the S12 as comparison. You can see it has, like at 9K, it has more energy than the S12. It has more energy at 6K. Like I already said, the S12 is more on the bright side of things, and I personally like the S12 very much. But this year, even it borders to this thin line where I say, it's actually a bit too bright. Like, I don't mind it most of the time, but I'm really usually on the volume dial and turning it down. It's just, it gets too much even for me. And I think most people will not like this presentation. But if you are more into treble things, yeah, this is working very well for low volume listening, and you do get a pretty good amount of detail for low volume, and that's a nice thing. And that's also why I actually used it more than I first thought when I saw the graph. Because yeah, like your volume, it just works fine. I would recommend, well, the next time Raptgo makes something or makes a second revision of this, I would recommend lowering 9K by like at least 3-4 decibels, make it a bit lower, and also look at 5 to 6K, this region, also lowered by like 3 decibels at least. You will keep a similar tone overall, like the treble will have a similar timbre, and we use that term overall, but it will no longer sound that aggressive, because but these frequencies are on the same level or a bit above the pinna rise at like 2.5K, and I don't think most people are a great fan of that. Like, I think if you would keep 9K, like this could still be fine, but 5K I would push down a bit in terms of, yeah, improvement suggestions here. But again, I'm treble head, so if you don't like treble, I think even this could be too much for you, as I also said in my review for the S12. Like, I like treble, that's why I am not minding that much. But to give you a few examples, this would mean if you listen on normal volume, it will definitely turn out harsh in the treble. And I noted specifically the synthwave in my library that is more aggressive, like Zero from Sidewalks and Skeletons or Depressive Ghosts from Nightcrawler, came off as way too much, and I had to reduce the volume definitely below listening volume. Yeah, and unfortunately, same story for upper mid / lower treble. It is not the worst offender in terms of how much energy it has, and again, I will compare to the S12. They are pretty close here, so it's not bad. I would still like to see a bit less energy though, like at least 2 decibels less. Just makes it come off a bit more natural overall. But on the opposite side, but I also said on my S12 review, if you have female vocals but a bit recessed in the mix, yeah, this will push them out very well, and it will give them a nice clarity. Not the most natural tone, not bad, but we have a really good clarity to it. And Never Fade Away from the Cyberpunk 27 soundtrack, great example for that. Vocalist is relatively recessed in the mix. Having the right IEM will bring her out extremely nicely. But again, if you have a nicely pronounced vocalist, in the Nier Automata soundtrack for instance, again, highly recommended for me, it's a great soundtrack, it will just come off as a bit, like, actually thin, as a bit too forward, and maybe even shouty at times. I'm not the greatest fan of that, but overall, again, I'm not that treble sensitive, so it does work for me here. It's, like, not too bad, but also not the best. And we come to mids, and it's a V-shaped IEM. And to my surprise, wow, this thing actually has good mids. Again, just goes to show if you have an BA that is relatively close to the nozzle, or if your implementation of the separation is done well, V-shaped IEMs can sound really good for mids, at least for occasional, or like for occasional, for some tracks. And me, I'm usually using vocals because I really love male vocals, and from Linkin Park, for instance. And this thing has this nice trait that also the ISN H40 had. A vocalist is in your head in the middle. It's there. Like, you can hear the vocalist here, and everything else happens on the height of the ears or even more out. And it just, it works so nicely for everything male vocal related in the metal genre. But I just, like, I can't tell you, like, I didn't expect this. Like, I was really taken by surprise when the vocal presence was this good. Because usually they tend to be really lost in the mix if you have more V-shaped IEMs. They're just pushed back and I got like, muffled, I'm saying something, can you understand that? Here, very clear, nicely between your ears. So that was definitively better than on the Kailua, which I will say in my review already separates pretty decently and is in good tone. But this thing definitely is better there. Like the male vocals here actually sound really good. Although again, this comes at the cost because it's V-shape. The lower mids get pronounced quite a bit more. It's definitely more than neutral would ever call for, and that makes them on one side of the spectrum more full, like bass guitars for instance, or yeah, as I said, like growls or something, definitely more full. But it costs you clarity, and that means, yeah, doesn't fit really my personal preference. And I think at this price point, I would prefer a bit less lower mids and a bit less upper bass. We talk about that next. But overall, it's alright, and if you like you're a good centered vocalist in the middle of your ear, this will exactly be for you. Like, it's an energetic IEM and it has a good vocalist in the middle, but it's not the natural sounding one that you would want. Like, it definitely doesn't sound as nice as the Kailua, and we talk about that. Like, again, timbre is very important for some people, and I think the Kailua does this so well by keeping dynamics. This one here just not. Like, it just sounds it sounds off, it sounds unnatural. And yeah, if you don't have vocals, because you have this raised lower mids, it's really not the greatest sounding thing in the world overall. And again, I can see it working for some people really well, but for most of people, I just don't think it will be their choice. And yeah, come to bass boost. Yeah, this has a, I think a tame, I know the tame here, 8 to 10 decibels lift, mostly below 300 hertz. It starts a bit before that, but not too bad. So it's not bad overall. I just prefer to be the mids more flat. But again, this makes the bass more round, more full. And yeah, this gives them a decent punch and a decent, yeah, overall feeling of weight. It's not the best. I still think the S12, even though it's also V-shaped, similarly again, it has more bass, it still sounds a bit better there because just the driver is more technical. This one here has some punch, and yeah, the dynamic is definitely, again, doing its thing. But I just think if you just like if you like V-shape, I would still pick the S12 over this any day of the week in terms of bass representation. Just plainer, just superior. And yeah, but overall the tone is nice, and the Cyberpunk soundtrack I noted specifically had a nice representation. Didn't have much complaints there at all. Like, not the fastest, but it's still working absolutely fine, and I didn't have any problems. The biggest downside of the bass is actually the sub bass. It's not really that well visible on the graph, but yeah, like there's a slight roll-off, and this slight roll-off, unfortunately, with the type of drivers we are using, does not translate to a good sub bass. Interstellar's Mountains has a deep bass note at about 2 minutes 13 or 2 minutes 12, goes to like 2 minutes 16. I couldn't hear the bass note at like 2 minutes 13 and a half, like around 2 minutes 13, completely was lost. So yeah, this is not a good IEM with no rounder because yeah, it just lacks the sub bass quality, just not good enough. And then next, let's talk about the other technicalities. And I think I try to make this a bit shorter than my written review and just tell you, Soundstage, layer imaging, it has a good soundstage. It goes reasonably width, usually has like 5 layers, so that's pretty nice. Vocalist, as I said, was dead center in your head, so that's really nice. And imaging is absolutely fine, like I didn't have any problems. You can game with this without any issue, and instruments usually are placed neatly in the room. Separation is also said before, like ties a bit together with soundstage and staging. Yeah, vocalists really nicely separated, and usually you have clearly separated instrument lines and instruments. Probably also because, yeah, the crossover is not the best implemented. And I think some people will probably complain about the timbre and the crossover here. I honestly didn't hear it that much at all, so I won't tell you it's bad, just till you can see it on the graph, and I assume some people will be able to hear it. I didn't also, I won't complain about it. Dynamics, it's not the most dynamic IEM. It usually pushes out details, like it really forces details in your ear. and the Kailua, way better job in dynamics, like way better. And that means also coherence-wise, it's not bad. It sounds mostly like actually BA IEM until you come to the bass when the dynamic hits in. So yeah, it's all right. Like, I think you can hear the difference between the dynamic and the BAs, but it's not bad at all. And I didn't have any complaints with it. And that brings me then to the verdict. Yeah, I personally wouldn't mind a V-shaped signature overall. Like, that's fine. And yeah, the packaging is, again, like, this is cool. Like, this is really nice. Even at like 500, this would be cool and it would be unique. Then I would expect metal casing more, but now with this thick plastic, okay, the hinges slight problem. But yeah, this is very unique and I like them, but they at least tried it and there's so many nice attention to detail with this whole thing. It just falls apart in the details of the details because yeah, this thing cannot be removed. The bone conduction driver does not work. The nozzle is really thick. The ear hooks are missing. So it kind of falls apart in the last remaining few percentages. Like, it's too V-shaped as well for most of the people, I would assume. And yeah, the bone conduction driver could have saved you at least 20 bucks, probably maybe even 50. So then you could have brought this thing closer to 100. And man, even with this V-shaped signature at 100, it would be a pretty dang good deal. Just at like 160 as it is now, I really can't recommend it. I think it is just lacking too many particular details here to be recommended IEM. But again, it has a really cool aesthetic, a really nice matching case. And yeah, if you like to at least try something that is unique or what would be a unique thing in your collection, maybe go for a second-hand one or find something that's somewhere cheaper on sale. But at like 160 bucks, I can't recommend it. And yeah, that's it. Well, hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, if you have criticisms, if you have any other feedback, please leave a comment. And with this, Unspector out.